Hi everyone, welcome to FilmDirt. Let's go back to 1995 and revisit Judge Dredd, starring of course Sylvester Stallone, Armand Assante, Rob Schneider, Diane Lane and Max von Sydow. Now I have to come clean with you all here. I've got a soft spot for this film. I was kind of a Judge Dredd fan. I never actually subscribed to 2000 AD while I was at school. I would always see one lying around in the chill out room or the student union, and in my local library where I used to go occasionally, there would always be a hard copy of an annual or yearbook or something. And yes, I did go to a library. It was before the internet. For all you young ones, I'm in my 40s now, so uni and college for me was a long time ago. And I remember the artwork and the stories vividly. There was always this cool factor that this guy was almost robotic in a way, and he would just march into a criminal's den without a care in the world, and he was tough enough to take who he needed, and then they would get instant justice, whether it was having to be thrown into the cubes or getting a bullet from his trusty lawgiver. It was such an amazing comic. I don't know why I didn't subscribe to 2000 AD. I think it's probably a nostalgia thing. You always look back in time at better times, I guess. So looking at the film, I was really excited to see this. I remember seeing all the ads and the pictures of the costumes, which looked pretty much straight out of the comic. I'm thinking, Sylvester Stallone doesn't look too bad as Judge Dredd. He's got the right gruff look. You don't want too much of a, I don't want to be unkind, you don't want too much of a pretty boy as Judge Dredd. He wasn't that type of man, was he? He was just concentrated on bringing justice. It wasn't about any good aesthetics at all. It was just get the job done by any means necessary. And it was that was appealing about him and so cool. So really, even today, I've got no problem with Stallone as that character. It's just parts of that film weren't really up to par, were they? But it didn't really stop you enjoying it. When I revisited it yesterday, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have to be quite honest. The main problem I see with it is that it's very light, very PG if you like. And if it was just a little bit darker and the comedy toned down, this story I think would fit into something Stallone would do today. Dredd's brother in the film is Rico, played by Armand Assante, who kind of looks like Stallone. I could always see a similarity, and definitely a good fit. He helps frame Dredd for murder he didn't commit, gets banished to the cubes, and then finds himself in the cursed earth, which I believe was the land ravaged by some atom bomb or nuclear war, whatever happened in between each city, which was self-contained. Oh, it's a fantastic story, isn't it? And whilst all that is very interesting and pretty much lifted from the comics, this is where the film drags for me. I think they should have just kept the story as a day in the life, a cop on the beat. And if they were to, let's say, release a trilogy of these films, this story where he finds himself unmasked in the cursed earth, this would probably be the final episode or even the second. So we get to see a lot more of Dredd just on the beat. It's almost like the Wild West, isn't it? And that's what the character reminds me of. I always thought he would be like Clint Eastwood in all those westerns where he would just ride into town, shoot the bad guys, and any that survive would probably learn their lesson, hopefully. But he would just be the man. He would be cool and no one would mess with him. And the original RoboCop almost went there as well when he burst into I believe it was the drug factory, when he bashed the door down and just walked in with his gun out. That was very Judge Dredd to me. And I always saw the similarity there when I watched that scene. As for the rest of the cast, I think everyone is great here. There's no problem with the cast at all, especially Diane Lane and Max von Sydow. They're all great in their roles. Rob Schneider is a little bit annoying, and this is the comic relief that was just a little bit too excessive that I mentioned. And then he didn't have to linger throughout the whole story. He could have just disappeared for a while so I would get on with the story. But like I said, we should have just stuck with Judge Dredd, which is what the remake did with Karl Urban. We didn't need to banish him anywhere and spend the whole film in a different environment away from what he does best. Stallone spent such a long time not being Judge Dredd. He was trying to survive. And that brings us on to possibly the main complaint that everyone had. Took off his helmet. I have to say, I didn't really have that huge a problem with it. If he took off the helmet in front of Chief Justice or anyone superior to him, I'd be okay with that. It was just most of the film he wasn't with it because he wasn't a cop on the beat. And that's a shame because this film really worked and I think it had something. There was a charm here. I think it was because the visuals all looked like they fit. The ABC droid, although it wasn't a very good puppet, it looked like it fit in that space. It looked like it had a use and it almost looked real and functional. The other judges, I think, just looked like a scene in the comic. The Lawmaster bikes they rode, I did notice they had the nice fat tyres that they're always being drawn as. And the Janus story was pretty good. The fact that they're making clones of perfect judges that are actually of Rico, that was a nice angle. And having them hatch too early to help him fight off Dredd when they're not quite fully born is a little bit creepy, isn't it? And I think that was quite fitting of the comic as well. There was just so much good about this film, and I've got to say I did enjoy it. It's just let down, sadly, by too comedic in places with Fergie. I mean, all of this is great, but it's just needs to be in smaller doses. I don't think the filmmakers fully understood the character. Maybe the rumours are true that it was possibly Stallone's fault. He overrode young director Danny Cannon, insisted that he take off his helmet. There would have been a lot more longevity with this movie if they had just stuck with the comic themes a bit more and that lore already established. And let's acknowledge the costumes. I think those huge shoulder pads, the helmets, the spandex looking bodysuit, the giant gold eagle on the shoulder, it all looks great, doesn't it? It's almost comic accurate. And I just wish the rest of the film was as well. But looking past the faults, I really enjoyed this, I have to say. Ironically, if Stallone made a film like this today, I think he would have got it right and made it as dark as it should be, because I think his recent output has been a little dark and gritty. It's almost like he's evolved as he's got older. Well, in some ways it's almost a missed opportunity that he didn't maybe respect what Danny Cannon wanted to do. So as for a score, this is definitely above average. I'll give it 3.5. So next I'll probably revisit Karl Urban's Dredd. I'll look to rewatch that within the next few days, so look forward to speaking to you then. And just to leave you, as usual, with a little bit about myself. I'm a completely unbiased reviewer. I don't take any incentives or free tickets from any of the studios. All my opinions are completely my own. Thanks again for joining me, and join me again for my review of Dredd, coming soon. All the best, take care.